I said, you are gods, you are all sons of the Most High. Psalm 82:6. Greetings mortals, and a capital day to you all. I'm your host Simon, and you are watching the Library of Gnosis. According to the ancient Sumerian texts, humanity came about through a divine intervention by beings they called the Anunnaki, which can be translated as those from heaven, Anu, to earth, Ki, came. In the Abrahamic faiths, these divine beings would come to be labeled as angels, or Elohim. Elohim is the word often used in the Old Testament when talking about the divine. As many of you are already aware, Elohim is a Hebrew plural that translates as gods, plural. I believe that the Elohim spoken of in scripture are referencing the same beings that the Sumerians called the Anunnaki and Igigi, and that the Greeks dubbed the Olympians and Titans, and so on and so forth for basically every ancient religion, with few, if any, exceptions. If you have watched my channel before, you would know that I think Jesus, or Yeshua, is the same beings that the Greeks called Hermes, the Romans called Mercury, and the Egyptians called Thoth. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. When the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became the mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Genesis 6:4. Here they use the term sons of God. This is commonly interpreted as referencing angels. So, does this imply that God has other children other than Jesus? It seems so. Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. Exodus 22:28. This verse from Exodus clearly acknowledges the existence of other gods. The Old Testament is the story of the Elohim, which some might call gods, other extraterrestrials. If the New Testament really is a continuation of the Old Testament, then I do not see how the Elohim would simply disappear from the story. There must be a connection. There simply must be. The connection I am proposing is that Jesus is actually one of the Elohim. The Anunnaki were said to reside in what they called the Anu heaven. But he continued, you are from below, I am from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world. John 8:23. The father of Hermes is Zeus, which is sometimes, though disputed, equated with the Sumerian Anu, who in turn is the father of Enki. Some connect Hermes with Ninzida, and I used to think this for a long time, but I have now come to the conclusion that Enki is probably the best fit for Hermes. The planet Mercury, associated with the Babylonian Nabu, the son of Marduk, was in Sumerian times identified with Enki. Enki was the Sumerian god of wisdom, fresh water, intelligence, trickery and mischief, crafts, magic, exorcism, healing, creation, virility, fertility, and art. This perfectly matches up with the description of Hermes, and with Jesus, of course. Now, some might be offended by the fact that I'm saying that Jesus was a trickster figure, but let us take a closer look at the role of a trickster. Tricksters are revolutionary figures that challenge the natural order. They poke holes in what everyone takes for granted and fight systems that oppress. They work within a given religious or political system, but they wrestle with it, challenge it, and transform it. In Jesus, we see a trickster figure, one who respects the beliefs and traditions of real people, yet also questions them, challenges them, and subverts them for the sake of political and religious transformation. The father of Enki is Anu, the king of the gods. In later versions, Anu has parents, Anshar and Kishar, but the earliest texts do not discuss Anu's origin, and his preeminence is simply assumed. From my reading of the texts, Anu might have his origin in Namu, basically the primordial ocean, void or nothingness that existed before creation itself. This is mirrored in the Greek creation myth, where chaos is the primordial void. We find the same thing in the Norse creation myth, where the name for the primordial void is Ginnungagap. The story of Anu and Namu is even more closely mirrored in the Egyptian creation myth, where the name for the primordial ocean is Nu, which is the void which allowed the primordial god Atum to create himself. This is where the squaring of the circle comes in. Squaring the circle is a paradox. It is impossible to do. It is describing the nature of God, the creator who creates himself, and is of course also a symbol linked with Jesus. Now, some might get this confused and think that the primordial waters itself is actually the mother or goddess above the creator god himself. This would be incorrect to say. Namu, Ginnungagap, Nu, and Chaos are not actual gods. It is simply an anthropomorphic representation of nothingness. It cannot be a god, because it is not a thing. As mentioned, Anu is the father of Enki. In some stories, Enlil is also the son of Anu, where Enlil is the older of the brothers. But in actuality, the father of Enlil is often disputed and uncertain. Rather, I am gonna go ahead and jump to the conclusion that Enki is actually the firstborn son of Anu, as some sources claim. Though I'm not sure it matters. Hermes was the lastborn of Zeus, after all. Enki came about as the offspring of Anu and Namu. And, as we have already established, Namu is simply just the void. This would in essence make it so that Enki only has a father. Thoth was said to have created himself, literally speaking himself into existence. Jesus was of course called the Logos, or Word, and one of Thoth's titles was the voice of Ra. In some versions of the myth, Thoth is the son of Ra. Atum was also a solar deity, associated with the primary sun god Ra. Atum was linked specifically with the evening sun, while Ra, or the closely linked god Kefri, were connected with the sun at morning and midday. Basically, Ra as the father of Thoth is here interchangeable with Atum. Thoth may have been created by Ra, Atum and Kefri, as he once declared, "I am Thoth, the eldest son of Ra, whom Atum has fashioned, created from Kefri." In the Hermetica, the lost wisdom of the pharaohs, Thoth is shown the creation of the universe by Atum, and he is shown the primordial waters, not named in the text. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, for the joy set before him he endures the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Hebrews 12:2. Now we are coming to the end of this video. If you enjoy my work, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. Please leave a comment below, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time, mortals.